Hello and welcome to our edition of Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Clarisse Fortuné and these are the headlines. Paying the last respects to Pope Francis as 3 days of public mourning came to an end. World leaders and dignitaries have arrived ahead of Saturday's funeral, among them African heads of state. Hundreds of millions of people continue to die of malaria, despite great progress in controlling the disease and vaccine rollout. Malaria's Day's theme this year is calling for global solidarity in fighting the disease. And to Senegal, making waves in the world of surfing. But many local aspiring surfers have been left on the shores, held back by limited access to equipment and training. Now that tide may be turning. The last of the huge crowds of mourners shuffled through St. Peter's Basilica on Friday to pay their final respects to Pope Francis, some queuing for hours to catch a last glimpse of the late pontiff ahead of his funeral on Saturday. Those who didn't make the trip attended remembrance ceremonies around the world. In South Sudan, a country that Pope Francis visited, hundreds have gathered at the St. Teresa Cathedral in capital Juba for a service commemorating the life of the pontiff. Back to the Vatican, our correspondent Clovis Kazali came across Valerian Okeke, Archbishop of Onitsha in Nigeria, who made the trip.
Tomorrow will be very spiritually uplifting because many children of God from all parts of the world will be here. It's really a sign that God loves all of us and that when we reach out with love to other people, the world will be more united.
So the ceremony for the Pope's funeral will be held on Saturday at St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. I'm joined now by France 24's Clémence Valère. Clémence, world leaders have arrived in Rome for the big events. Do we know who from the continent made the trip?
Absolutely, Clarisse, we do. 4 heads of state have confirmed their presence: the president of the DRC, Cape Verde, the Central African Republic, and the new president of Gabon, Brice Oligui Nguema. Other countries are sending representatives. So for Morocco, it's the Crown Prince. Countries such as Uganda and Kenya have sent the speakers of the House. And of course, members of the African clergy will also take part in the funeral proceedings because some of them will also be participating in the election of the new pope.
The election we call the conclave, which will start after the funeral. It is expected to gather between May 6th and May 11th at the Sistine Chapel. So why is Africa important in this process?
So it's part of the Pope's legacy. Currently, there are 135 cardinal electors, 80% of which have been appointed under the reign of Pope Francis. And of these 135, 18 cardinal electors are from Africa, making Africa the 3rd most represented continent behind Europe and Asia. It's important to know that the African representation in the College of Cardinals has grown from 9% in 2013 to 14% in today. And it really shows the growing importance of the continent for the global Catholic Church. Let's not forget that Africa accounts for almost 20% of the global Catholic population, and the continent has a special place in the heart of Pope Francis, who visited 10 countries during his papal reign. We remember his 2015 trip in the Central African Republic when he pressed home the message of peace while the country was in conflict. And of course, in 2019, when he hosted at the Vatican the president and the vice president of South Sudan, and knelt down and kissed their feet in order to really bolster that spirit of peace, togetherness, and brotherhood.
So, Clémence, does it mean that the next pope will be African?
So it's important to know that we have had already 3 popes that were of African origin, North African origin, between the 2nd and 5th century BC. What we're talking about now is a pope, the first African pope within in 1,500 years. 3 names have been floated so far. First of all, Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana. He's 77 years old and has held several important positions within the Vatican. In 2003, he became the first Ghanaian cardinal and is viewed as a progressive voice from the global south. Fun fact, he was once a guitarist in a funk band. He's also known for his advocacy on social justice, environmental issues, and human rights, much like Pope Francis. However, like a lot of the African clergy, is quite conservative on LGBT issues. However, has opposed criminalization of same-sex relationships. So we might say he is progressive on certain aspects, much like the Pope, the former Pope. On the extreme opposite, we've got the Guinean Cardinal Robert Serra, known for his extremely conservative views. He served as prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of Sacraments. Other interesting fact, became the youngest priest appointed as bishop by John Paul II in 1979. As I said, conservative. He's quite conservative in his theological views and really puts an emphasis on traditional liturgy, has compared in the past homosexuality and abortion to Nazism. And then, of course, we've got Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Besungu, who was appointed cardinal by Pope Francis in 2018, is from the same order that inspired the Pope's name, and his justice works, his social justice works, reflect very much the lines of Pope Francis. So now it's a question of, will we have an Habemus Papam Africani? That's anybody's guess.
Habemus Papam Africani, who used to play in a funk group. That would be nice. Now, Rwanda and the DR Congo have set a goal of reaching a draft peace agreement by May 2nd in a latest of mediation effort. After recent talks in Qatar, where they had agreed to halt fighting in the east of the country, the foreign ministers signed a declaration in Washington in the presence of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. In a statement, both countries vowed to respect each other's sovereignty and to refrain from providing state military support to non-state armed groups. Today is World Malaria Day, a moment to shine a spotlight on one of the world's oldest and deadliest diseases. Major progress in prevention and treatment has been made, but malaria continues to claim hundreds of thousands of lives each year, especially in Africa. The mosquito-borne disease killed nearly 600,000 people in 2023. Joining us now is Dr. Michael Adekule-Charles, CEO of the RBM Partnership to End Malaria. Dr. Charles, welcome to our program. So the first question, so where does Africa stand right now in a fight against malaria?
Thank you so much, and welcome to the viewers as well. As you rightly said, this disease, an ancient disease, is really plaguing Africa. Last year alone, in 2023, we had 263 million malaria cases. 94% of the cases are unfortunately on the African continent. 95% of the deaths are on the African continent. So definitely malaria affects Africa, and we're working with the countries to ensure that we can bring down the burden of malaria, in the communities as well as in the countries. Now we've gotten to a stage where we've said we've reached the perfect storm, because the longer we wait in the fight against malaria, the harder it becomes, because of conflicts, because of flooding, because of climate change, because of funding issues. So we really need to come together as a community, as the whole globe, to see how we can really bring down the burden of malaria.
So, Dr. Charles, what about the vaccination? The malaria vaccine rolled out made headlines. So how significant was that? Was that a game changer?
Indeed, the malaria vaccine did really make significant strides in the fight against malaria. We have various tools. We have bed nets, we have indoor residual spraying, but we don't only have one vaccine that came out in 2023, but we have 2 vaccines, one in 2023, one in 2024. So this really is another tool within the toolbox. What I need to say, however, is that not one single tool is a game changer. We need to see how we use this in combination to ensure that we have the most effectiveness amongst our children and amongst our population. as I speak currently, 20 countries in Africa have been rolling out the vaccines, which is very significant. And by the end of this year alone, we'll have about 4 million children vaccinated with malaria. And we're seeing that with the vaccines, we're able to reduce the incidence of malaria. We're able to reduce the incidence of severe malaria in the children, meaning we're able also to reduce the deaths that will occur from malaria.
So not everyone has access to these vaccines. So what other strategies or tools, we're talking about tools, are showing promises in malaria prevention?
I mean, the tools that are showing promises are the tools that have been there in the past. We have the bed nets, as I said. We have indoor residual spraying. We have what we call chemoprevention. So seasonal malaria chemoprevention for children that are really prone towards the rainy season. So all these tools are really, making sure that we drive down the burden of malaria. However, we cannot just use one single tool. We need to use them in combination of one another. The second thing is obviously access. When we talk about vaccines, the vaccines have to be given. 4 doses has to be given for a child to say that he or she's vaccinated. We know the complexities around access. We know the complexities within the rural communities. So again, really finding a way where we can ensure that access to these tools is really first and foremost a priority so that we can ensure that children are able to stay protected.
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Adekule Charles, CEO of the RBM Partnership to End Malaria. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Senegal is making waves in a world of surfing. Known for its powerful Atlantic swells, the country has long been a hidden gem for surfers. But despite the ideal conditions, many local aspiring surfers have been left on the sidelines, held back by limited access to equipment and training. Now, that tide may be turning. Senegal's first professional surfers, Ibra Sambo and Cherry Fall, are leading a new initiative to bring surfboards and opportunities to the next generation.
16-year-old Demba grew up in Gore, the coastal quarter of Dakar, where the sea is part of everyday life. Since the age of 9, he's dreamt of just one thing: becoming a professional surfer. But for the passionate young athlete, practicing the sport has had its challenges, as equipment is scarce and the few surfboards available are often in poor condition.
It broke, and I fixed it. It broke once more, and I fixed it again. This is the 3rd time it's broken. Every time this part breaks, it's not possible to surf, because this part allows you to ride the waves and steer you in the right direction.
Now, a wave of change is reaching young surfers like Demba. Thanks to a network of Australian donors, dozens of brand new boards are being handed out. Led by the Anda Surf Club, the project has collected and delivered more than 250 surfboards. At the heart of the initiative are Ibra and Sharif, Senegal's only professional surfers with sponsorship deals.
This is just the beginning to help them live their dream like we did when we were young, back when our parents couldn't afford to buy us boards or anything else. This is just the beginning because we want to train the next generation.
The initiative also includes coaching and practical sessions. As the young surfers take their new boards out on the water, the difference is instant. With better balance and greater speed, many are now one step closer to their dream.
The board was very easy to use and very light. It's really good. The new board motivates me to keep going and make my dream come true.
Beyond Senegal, the association hopes to expand and make surfing more accessible across West Africa.
Beautiful. Well, that's the end of our edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching. More news coming up on France 24.